I never thought I'd see someone die with peace in their eyes, but I did. 3 men set him on fire, and instead of screaming, he prayed for them. That night, everything I believed about God, faith, and courage shattered. What happened next will leave you speechless. My name is Ibrahim Musa. I am 34 years old, and for most of my life I believed fear was the same thing as faith. I was born into Islam the way a child is born into gravity. It was always there, always pulling, always in control. My father taught me that obedience was survival. He never needed to raise his voice. His silence alone could make my heart tremble. When he entered a room, the air itself seemed to stiffen. My mother would lower her eyes. I would lower mine too. Respect, they called it, honor, discipline, but I knew the truth even as a child. It was fear. I memorized verses before I understood their meaning. I repeated prayers before I understood my own voice. I learned early that questions were dangerous. My father would say, "A strong man never doubts." So I trained myself to become strong. I buried every question deep inside my chest. On the outside, I became someone people admired. At the mosque, elders smiled when they saw me. They spoke of my future like it was already decided. I smiled back. I nodded. I said the right words. But inside, something was missing. I could not explain it. I only knew that peace always felt just out of reach. At night, when the house was silent, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder why God felt so far away. I never spoke those thoughts aloud. In my world, doubt was not weakness. Doubt was betrayal. If you are listening to me now, maybe you understand that feeling. Maybe you know what it means to live inside a cage no one else can see. If stories like mine help even one person find courage, then please subscribe, like, and share this testimony so the truth can reach those still trapped in silence. Because everything I believed was about to be tested in a way I never imagined. It happened on a hot night when the air smelled like dust and smoke. I remember the sound first, not shouting, not anger, something worse. I remember the silence of people watching. My feet stopped moving before my mind understood why. And then I saw him. The flames reflected in his eyes, but there was no hatred in them, only something I had never seen before: peace. In that moment, everything inside me began to shake, though my body stood frozen. I did not know his name, but somehow, he knew mine. And without speaking, he asked me a question that would destroy the life I knew. That was the night my faith stopped feeling like certainty and started feeling like chains. I did not realize it then, but the fire in front of me was not just burning a man, it was burning the lies I had carried my entire life. And when the flames rose higher, something inside my soul whispered a truth I was not ready to hear. Nothing would ever be the same again. I wish I could tell you I was brave. I was not. I was afraid of what I saw, and even more afraid of what I felt. For the first time in my life, I wondered if truth could exist outside everything I had been taught. And that single question would lead me down a path of loss, pain, and unimaginable grace. But before I could find freedom, I would have to lose everything I thought defined me forever. And it began with a man the world chose to burn alive that night in silence now forever. I remember every detail of that night as if time itself refused to let me forget. The air was heavy and dry, clinging to my skin as I walked home from evening prayers. The streetlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows that stretched across the dirt road. At first, I thought the small crowd ahead was just another argument, another ordinary disturbance. But something felt wrong. No one was shouting. No one was intervening, they were just watching. My steps slowed. My heart began to beat harder, warning me before my eyes could understand. Then I saw him. He was on his knees, his hands tied behind his back, his clothes torn and dirty. 3 men stood around him. I recognized them. They were respected in the community, men who prayed in the front row of the mosque, men my father trusted. One of them held a container. The smell hit me before my mind could process it. Petrol. My stomach tightened. The Christian man was trembling, but he was not begging. His lips were moving quietly, praying. One of the men shouted, demanding he deny Isa, deny Jesus. The Christian lifted his head slowly. His face was bruised, blood running down from his forehead into his eyes. But there was something else in those eyes, something I did not understand. Peace? He whispered something I could barely hear. The man holding the petrol grew angry and poured it over him. The liquid soaked his clothes, dripping onto the ground beneath him. My body froze. I wanted to move. I wanted to speak. But fear rooted me in place. Someone beside me muttered, "This is justice. Justice." The word felt wrong inside my chest. The man struck a match. For a moment, the tiny flame flickered harmlessly in the darkness. Then he dropped it. The fire erupted instantly, wrapping around the Christian's body like a living thing. The crowd stepped back, but no one ran. No one screamed, except me. Inside, the Christian cried out, but not in the way I expected. He did not curse them. He did not beg for mercy. He said, "Jesus, forgive them." His voice was weak, but clear. Forgive them. My mind could not accept it. Why would he forgive them? Why was he not filled with hatred? The flames grew higher, consuming him. And then, through the fire, he looked directly at me. I cannot explain how, but I knew he saw me, not just my face, me. His eyes did not accuse me, they did not condemn me. They were filled with something deeper than pain. Love? It made no sense. Everything I had been taught told me he should be afraid, but he was not. And that terrified me more than the fire itself. When his body finally collapsed, the silence returned. The men walked away like nothing had happened. The crowd slowly disappeared, but I could not move. My legs felt weak. My chest felt tight. That night, when I returned home, I washed my hands again and again, though they were never dirty. I could still smell the smoke. I could still see his eyes. I lay in bed, staring into the darkness, hearing his words over and over. "Jesus, forgive them." I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the fire. I saw his peace. And for the first time in my life, a thought entered my mind that I could not control. What if he was right? I tried to erase that night from my mind. I tried to bury it the same way I had buried every doubt I had ever felt. The next morning, I woke before dawn and performed wudu, letting the cold water run over my hands, my face, my feet. I scrubbed harder than usual, as if I could wash away the images burned into my memory. I stood on my prayer mat and recited the familiar words. My voice was steady, but inside, something was broken. I waited for peace to come the way it always had before. It did not come. Instead, his face appeared again in my thoughts. The fire, his eyes, his voice forgiving the men who were killing him. I finished the prayer, but it felt empty, like speaking into silence. I told myself I just needed more discipline, more devotion. Doubt, I had been taught, was weakness, so I fought it the only way I knew how. I read the Quran longer than usual that day. I forced myself to focus on every word. But instead of comfort, I felt confusion. Verses I had memorized since childhood suddenly felt heavier, harder. Questions formed in my mind before I could stop them. Why did he have peace while he was dying? Why did I feel fear while I was safe? I shut the book quickly, my hands trembling. I looked around my room even though I was alone. Fear had followed me inside. Not fear of punishment, fear of truth. Flashbacks began to surface. I remembered being a boy asking my father once, "How do we know it is true?" His hand struck the table so hard it made me jump. "We do not question truth," he said. His eyes had been cold. I never asked again. Now years later the question had returned on its own, and this time I could not silence it. Days passed, but the feeling did not leave. It grew stronger. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my heart restless. I began searching online, late when everyone else was asleep. My fingers moved carefully, deleting history, checking over my shoulder even when no one was there. I did not know exactly what I was looking for, only that I needed answers. One night, as I scrolled through my phone, something appeared on the screen, a small icon, a simple cross, a Bible app recommendation. My heart began to pound instantly. I froze staring at it. It felt dangerous just to look at it. My father's voice echoed in my mind, "Traitors burn in hell." My thumb hovered over the screen. Opening it felt like stepping off a cliff. I could lose everything, my family, my identity, my life. I told myself to ignore it, to close the phone and forget. But the memory of the burning man returned. His voice, his peace. "Jesus, forgive them." My hand was shaking now. I did not understand why I felt drawn to it. It made no sense. Everything in my life had taught me to stay away, to fear it. But something deeper than fear was pulling me forward, something I could not explain. I realized in that moment that my greatest fear was no longer punishment. It was living my entire life without knowing the truth. My thumb moved slowly toward the screen, and then I touched it. The moment the Bible app opened, my heart began pounding so hard I thought it might betray me. The screen glowed softly in the darkness of my room, illuminating my trembling hands. I stared at the words, unsure where to begin. Part of me wanted to close it immediately to pretend I had never touched it, but another part of me, a deeper part I did not fully understand, refused to look away. I scrolled slowly, my breathing shallow, until my eyes stopped on a verse. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I froze. Rest. That word pierced something inside me. I read it again and again. No threats, no commands, just an invitation. It felt personal, as if the words were written directly to me. My chest tightened, and I did not know why. All my life, faith had been something demanded from me, something enforced, something heavy. But this felt different, gentle, alive. I kept reading, afraid and drawn at the same time. "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep." I whispered the words under my breath, "lays down his life." My mind flashed back to the man in the fire, his calm, his forgiveness, his peace. A strange warmth began to rise inside my chest, and it terrified me. I quickly locked my phone and looked around my room, my ears straining for any sound. The house was silent, but I felt exposed, guilty, like someone could see inside my thoughts. I placed the phone under my pillow, my hands cold with fear. What was happening to me? I had spent my entire life believing this book was dangerous, forbidden, yet the words I read did not feel like danger. They felt like truth. That realization frightened me more than anything else. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, my heart refusing to calm. I wondered if God was angry with me. I wondered if I had already gone too far. But deep inside, beneath the fear, there was something else. Peace, small, fragile, but real. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My entire body froze. The steps moved slowly, then stopped near my door. I held my breath, afraid even the sound of my heartbeat would betray me. A shadow passed beneath the door. I stayed completely still. Seconds felt like hours. Then the footsteps continued, fading away. I exhaled shakily, my body weak with relief, but the fear remained. I realized in that moment how fragile my world truly was. One discovery could destroy everything. My father would never understand. My family would never forgive me. I turned my head and looked at the pillow beside me. The phone was still there, waiting, calling me. I knew I should stop. I knew I should delete it and forget everything. That would be the safe choice, the logical choice. But safety no longer felt the same. Because for the first time in my life, I had heard words that did not demand my fear. They offered me rest. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come easily. My thoughts raced, my heart caught between two worlds, one built on obedience, one built on something I could not yet name. And deep inside me, a question began to form, quiet, but impossible to silence. What if I had been wrong my entire life? Sleep did not come easily anymore. Every night became a battlefield between fear and something I could not explain. I continued reading the Bible in secret, always hiding my phone quickly at the smallest sound. The words of Jesus stayed with me during the day, echoing in my thoughts while I pretended to live normally. But inside, nothing was normal anymore. I was exhausted, not just physically, but deep in my soul. One night, after hours of restless thinking, I finally fell asleep, and that was when everything changed. At first, there was nothing, only darkness. Not the darkness of night, but something deeper, heavier. It pressed against me from every direction. I could not see my hands, I could not see my body, but I could feel fear. Then the whispers began. Quiet at first, then louder, voices overlapping, accusing. Traitor, disgrace, you are lost. The words wrapped around me like chains. I tried to move, but I could not. Panic filled my chest. My heart pounded violently. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then suddenly the darkness began to change. A faint light appeared in the distance, small but steady. It did not flicker like fire. It glowed with calm certainty. The whispers grew louder, desperate, as if trying to pull me back. But the light moved closer. And as it did, the fear began to loosen its grip on me. A figure emerged from the light. I could not see every detail, but I saw his eyes. They were filled with something I had never seen before. Not anger, not judgment, love, pure and overwhelming. He stood in front of me, and the darkness could not touch him. The whispers stopped. Silence fell. He looked directly at me, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle yet stronger than anything I had ever heard. Ibrahim. My name. He knew my name. My knees felt weak and I fell, unable to stand before him. I felt exposed, every secret inside me laid bare. But I did not feel shame. I felt seen. He reached out his hand toward me. Do not be afraid, he said. I am the truth you have been seeking. His words entered my soul like water on dry ground. The fear that had lived inside me for so long began to break apart. I wanted to stay there forever. I wanted to remain in that peace. But suddenly the light began to fade. I reached out desperately. Don't leave, I tried to say, and then I woke up. My body was shaking violently, my face was wet with tears, my chest rose and fell as I struggled to breathe. The room was dark and silent, but everything felt different. I sat up, pressing my hands against my face. The dream had felt more real than anything I had ever experienced. I knew deep inside who I had seen. Jesus. The name formed in my mind with certainty. Fear should have come, but instead there was peace. And yet beneath that peace, there was also terror. Because I knew what this meant. Nothing in my life could remain the same. And as I sat there in the darkness, trying to steady my breathing, I heard something outside my door. A floorboard creaked. Someone was awake. Someone was listening. I did not realize how close danger was until it was too late. For days after the dream, I lived in a strange mixture of peace and fear. Peace, because something inside me had changed. Fear, because I knew the world around me had not. I became more careful, more alert. I hid my phone deeper. I watched every movement in the house, but fear has a way of finding you, no matter how careful you are. It happened in the afternoon. I was in the washing area behind the house when I heard my younger brother call my name. His voice sounded different, tight, controlled. When I walked inside, I saw him standing in my room, holding my phone. My blood turned cold. He looked at me slowly, his eyes filled with something I had never seen before. Not confusion, not sadness, betrayal. What is this? He asked quietly. My mouth went dry. I could not answer. He turned the screen toward me. The Bible app was open. The cross stared back at me like an accusation. Time seemed to stop. My brother's face hardened. Without another word, he walked past me. Wait, I whispered, my voice breaking. But he did not stop. I knew where he was going, my father. My legs felt weak as I followed him. Every step felt like walking toward my own execution. My father was sitting in the living room. My brother handed him the phone without speaking. My father looked down at the screen. His face did not change at first. He stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly he lifted his eyes to meet mine. I had never seen that look before. It was worse than anger. It was disappointment. "Is this yours?" he asked. His voice was calm, but it carried something dangerous beneath it. My throat tightened. I could not lie. "Yes," I said. The word felt like it shattered the air. My mother gasped softly behind him. My father stood up slowly. "You shame this family," he said. Each word hit me like a blow. "You betray everything I have taught you." I felt tears fill my eyes, but I did not look away. "I did not betray you," I said weakly. "I only wanted truth." His hand slammed against the table. "Truth?" he shouted. His calm was gone now. "You think truth is in this?" He held up the phone like it was poison. My mother began to cry quietly, covering her mouth. My father stepped closer to me. "You will delete this," he said. "You will repent, or you will no longer be my son." The words pierced deeper than anything else. My entire life had been built on his approval, his acceptance. Losing it felt like losing myself. My chest tightened, my heart racing. Fear screamed inside me to obey, to apologize, to go back to safety. But another voice, quiet but steady, rose from somewhere deeper. The memory of the dream, the eyes that had looked at me with love. "I cannot," I whispered. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew everything had changed. My father stared at me like I was a stranger. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He turned away and made a call. His voice was low, but I heard enough. "He has dishonored us," he said. My heart pounded violently as I realized what he meant. I was no longer safe in my own home. I did not sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my room, my back against the wall, listening to every sound in the house. Every footstep made my heart jump. Every creak in the wood felt like a warning. I knew something had changed. Not just in my father's eyes, but in the entire house. I was no longer a son, I was a problem. Morning came slowly, bringing no comfort. My father did not speak to me, he did not even look at me. That silence hurt more than his anger. When he finally did speak, his voice was cold and final. "Leave," he said, just one word. My chest tightened. I waited, hoping he would say something else. He did not. My mother stood behind him, her face wet with tears. She did not defend me, she did not stop him. She only whispered, "Go before you make it worse." Worse. I did not know what worse meant, but I knew it was real. My hands trembled as I picked up the small bag beside my bed. I had packed it during the night just in case. I walked past my father. He did not move. He did not say goodbye. I stepped outside and the door closed behind me. The sound echoed in my chest like something breaking. I stood there for a long time staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. It never did. I was alone. The street felt different now, colder, stranger. People passed by, but no one stopped. No one saw me. Or maybe they chose not to. I stayed with a friend for a few nights, but word spread quickly. His family grew uncomfortable. They asked questions he could not answer. Soon I had to leave there too. I moved from place to place, never staying long. Fear followed me everywhere. I checked over my shoulder constantly. I avoided familiar streets. I avoided everyone I knew. Loneliness became my only companion. But in that loneliness, something unexpected happened. One night, sitting alone in a small rented room, I opened the Bible app again. My hands were steady this time. I read slowly, absorbing every word. "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." I did not fully understand it, but it gave me strength. I found an online church service and listened quietly, the volume low. The pastor spoke about grace, about how God loved us not because we were perfect, but because He was. No one had ever told me that before. I felt something warm in my chest. Not fear, not shame, love. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as a failure, not as a traitor, but as someone worthy of love. Tears rolled down my face as I listened. I realized I was not alone. Even without my family, I was not abandoned. But the danger had not disappeared. One afternoon, as I walked down a quiet street, I noticed a familiar car parked nearby. My heart froze. I knew that car. It belonged to my father. He was looking for me, and I knew he would not stop until he found me. I saw him before he saw me. His car was parked across the street, the engine off, sitting in silence like a predator waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. My heart began to pound so hard it hurt. For a second I thought about turning around, disappearing into the crowd, pretending I had never seen him. But something inside me told me it was already too late. The car door opened slowly. My father stepped out. He looked older than I remembered. His shoulders, once strong and unshakable, seemed heavier now, but his eyes were the same, sharp, unyielding. He was not alone. Two other men stepped out with him, men from the mosque, men I had known my entire life. My mouth went dry, my legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stand still. Running would only confirm what they already believed. My father walked toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. Every step closed the distance between the life I had lived and the life I had chosen. When he stopped in front of me, neither of us spoke at first. We simply stared at each other. I searched his face for any sign of the father I once knew. I found none. "Come home," he said finally. His voice was calm, but there was something desperate beneath it. "This ends now." The words hung in the air between us. Home. The word felt foreign now. That place was no longer my home, not after everything that had happened. "I cannot," I said quietly. His jaw tightened. The men behind him shifted slightly, watching me carefully. "You will return," he said. "You will repent, and this shame will be erased." Shame. The word struck me deeply. My entire life I had lived to avoid that word. I had obeyed. I had submitted. I had become everything he wanted. And yet, I had never known peace, not until now. Fear clawed at my chest, begging me to surrender, to apologize, to make this stop. But the memory of the dream returned to me, the voice that spoke my name, the eyes that saw me without condemnation. I realized in that moment that if I went back, I would lose more than my safety. I would lose my soul. My voice trembled, but I spoke anyway. "I love you," I said. His expression flickered, surprised, but I belong to Jesus now. The words felt both terrifying and freeing at the same time. Silence fell. The men behind him tensed. My father's face darkened, his eyes filled with something I could not fully understand. Anger, pain, loss. For a moment I thought he might strike me. My body prepared for it instinctively, but he did not move. He simply stared at me, searching for something. "You are no longer my son," he said finally. The words pierced deeper than any blade. My chest tightened, but I did not look away. He turned slowly and walked back toward the car. The men followed him without speaking. He opened the door, then paused. For a second, I thought he might turn back. He did not. He got inside, and the car drove away. I stood there alone, my heart shattered and yet strangely at peace. I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I expected him to come back. I expected anger. I expected punishment. But he didn't. The silence that followed was heavier than any words could have been. I stood on the street outside my small rented room, watching the dust swirl in the fading light, and then realized something that terrified me even more than his rejection. The person I had been, the obedient son, the dutiful Muslim, the one who feared every step outside my father's shadow, was gone forever. I mourned that self quietly, almost as if I were burying a part of me in the ground. Tears came unbidden, hot and relentless, and I let them fall. I had lost my family, my identity, my home. Everything I thought defined me had vanished in the span of a single conversation. And yet, somewhere deep inside, something else was rising. I had feared death my entire life. Not physical death, but the death of approval, of identity, of safety. And now, I was living it. But this death felt different. It felt like the breaking open of a seed buried too long in darkness. Pain filled me, but so did a strange lightness. For the first time, I understood the meaning of rebirth, not the kind whispered in myths or promised by ritual, but an internal spiritual transformation. I had been buried in fear, obedience, and shame. And now something new was growing. I spent days walking the streets aimlessly, talking to no one, afraid of being recognized, yet feeling a strange freedom in anonymity. I sat by small parks and watched families pass, wondering how I could love people who had betrayed me, how I could forgive when the wounds felt so deep. Slowly I began to pray, not the memorized verses, not the rigid routines, but real words that came from my heart. "Jesus," I whispered, "if you are real, show me, help me find peace." And something shifted. I cannot explain it. It was subtle at first, like a breeze stirring a curtain, but it became undeniable. The weight of fear loosened. The shame receded. I felt a presence with me, a comfort I had never known. Even though I was still alone, I did not feel abandoned. My heart began to heal, though the scars remained. Every memory of my father's anger, every step I had taken to hide my faith, every night spent trembling alone, they were all part of the death of my old self. And through that death, something beautiful began to grow. I realized that I could live without fear. I could live without shame. I could live with truth. I could live with Him. In those moments of solitude, I understood that spiritual rebirth is not about replacing one life with another. It is about letting go of everything that binds you and finding a new life inside. I wept for what I had lost, and I wept for what I had never truly known. But for the first time in my life, I believed I would survive. I would not just survive, I would live. And living meant walking forward, step by step, in freedom, in faith, and in a love I had never imagined possible. Months passed, and with each day the fear that had once gripped me so tightly began to loosen. I found a new spiritual family among believers who welcomed me without judgment, without questions, without conditions. They did not care about the past I had run from or the shame I had carried like a heavy cloak. They only wanted to walk with me, pray with me, and teach me what it meant to truly belong. The nightmares that had followed me from my childhood, the fear of punishment, the terror of being found out, began to fade. I started attending online services, reading the Bible daily, and even joined a small local group that met in secret. For the first time, I understood grace, real grace. I realized that God's love had never depended on my obedience, my memorization, or my ability to avoid mistakes. It had always been there, waiting for me to reach out. I began to share my testimony with others, cautiously at first, then with more courage. Every time I spoke, I felt pieces of my broken heart stitch themselves together. I prayed for my family, for the men who had tried to control me, for those who had hurt the man I had seen burned. I did not hate them anymore. I felt something stronger than anger or fear. I felt peace. One afternoon, I stood on the small balcony of my rented room, sunlight washing over my face, and I remembered the fire. I remembered the man's eyes, calm even as the flames consumed him. I remembered the dream, the presence of Jesus speaking my name with love and conviction. The fire that had once terrified me now felt like a spark that had ignited the faith burning inside me. I realized true freedom was not safety. It was truth. Safety could be taken away. Family could reject me. Enemies could threaten me. But truth anchored in Christ, could never be shaken. And so I lived. Every step, every breath, every moment was filled with a new purpose. I learned to walk boldly, not because the world could no longer harm me, but because I belonged to Him who had already given me life. I learned to love fully, to forgive, and to hope even when everything around me seemed hopeless. The chains that had bound me, fear, shame, doubt, had been broken. I was no longer the boy who hid in silence, terrified of every word spoken by my father. I was Ibrahim Musa, reborn in spirit, free in soul, and alive in Christ. And if my story reaches even one person who is still trapped, still afraid, still questioning, I pray that you hear his voice calling your name. He knows you, he loves you. And like me, you can find peace that the world cannot take away. The fire that was meant to destroy can become the spark that saves. And I know now that no matter the cost, the path of truth, the path of Jesus, is worth every step.